My friend Takeshi quit his delivery job after what happened on December 15th. He'd been delivering for a ramen shop in Shibuya for 3 years, never had any problem. That night, the order came in at 11:47 p.m. One tonkotsu ramen to apartment 404 in a building called Sakura Heights. The address was in a residential area he'd never delivered to before. Takeshi loaded his delivery bag and headed out into the cold December night. The building was exactly where his GPS said it would be, a modern concrete structure. But something felt off. The lobby was dimly lit, and the elevator made strange grinding noises as it moved. Fourth floor, doors opened with a soft boom. Apartment 404 was at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting dancing shadows on the wall. Takeshi knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Finally, footsteps approached from inside. The door opened just a crack, revealing nothing but darkness. A woman's voice whispered from the shadow, leave it by the door." Takeshi set down the ramen and stepped back. "That'll be 980 yen, he said to the crack in the door. A pale hand emerged, placing exact change on the floor. The door closed with a soft click. Takeshi collected the money and headed back to the elevator. But as he waited for the elevator, he heard something strange. Slurping sounds coming from apartment 404. Loud, wet slurping like someone drinking soup. But the ramen was still sitting outside the door, untouched. The next day, Takeshi mentioned the delivery to his manager. His manager frowned and pulled up the order record. "Sakura Heights," the manager said. "That building was demolished 5 years ago." Takeshi drove back to the address that same afternoon. Where the apartment building had stood the night before, there was only an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. A rusted sign read, "Future site of Sakura Heights, construction delayed indefinitely." But in his pocket, Takeshi still had the 980 yen. The coins were ice cold, and they never warmed up. Yamada-san worked the night shift at a pizza delivery chain in Osaka. Every night at exactly 12:30 a.m., the same order would come in. One large margarita pizza to the same address in an old residential district. The customer's name was listed as Suzuki M. Always paid in exact change, always requested no contact delivery. Yamada had been making this delivery for 2 months straight. The house was a traditional wooden structure, probably built in the 1960s. He would leave the pizza by the front door, ring the bell, and walk away. The money was always waiting in an envelope under the doorman. But one night in January, Yamada's curiosity got the better of him. After ringing the bell, he hid behind a nearby telephone pole. He wanted to see this mysterious customer who ordered every single night. Minutes passed, no one came to the door. But slowly, the pizza box began to move. It slid across the doorstep, disappearing under the gap beneath the front door. The entire box somehow fit through a space barely 2 centimeters high. Yamada rubbed his eyes. That was impossible. The next night, he decided to investigate further. This time, he peered through the front window after making the delivery. The house was completely dark inside, no furniture visible, but on the floor, dozens of empty pizza boxes were stacked in neat piles, all from their restaurant, all margarita pizzas, and in the center of the room, something was eating. Yamada couldn't make out what it was in the darkness, but he could hear the wet, tearing sounds of consumption. He backed away from the window, his hands shaking. The next morning, Yamada called the restaurant owner. He explained what he'd seen and asked about the delivery history. The owner was quiet for a long moment. "That customer," the owner said slowly, "has been ordering from us for 15 years. Every night at 12:30, same pizza, same payment method. We've never missed a delivery." Yamada asked if anyone had ever actually seen the customer. The owner's voice dropped to a whisper. "The last driver who tried to investigate quit the next day. He wouldn't tell us what he saw, but he never ordered pizza again." That night at 12:30, the order came in as usual. Yamada made the delivery, left the pizza, and walked away quickly. He never looked back. Some customers you just don't want to meet. This story was told to me by a delivery driver named Kimura-san. He used to work for a convenience store chain that offered 24-hour delivery. One rainy October night, he received an unusual order request. The customer wanted cigarettes, sake and flowers delivered to Meiji Cemetery. The address was specific, Gate 3 near the cherry blossom tree. Kimura thought it was strange, but the customer had already paid online. Plus, the tip was generous, 5,000 yen for a late-night delivery. He loaded the items into his delivery bag and drove through the rain. The cemetery gates were locked at this hour, but Gate 3 was slightly open. Kimura parked his scooter and walked through the entrance. His flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating rows of weathered tombstones. The cherry blossom trees were bare, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. Under the largest tree, he saw a figure sitting cross-legged on the ground. An elderly man in a dark suit, perfectly still despite the rain. "Excuse me," Kimura called out. "I have your delivery." The man didn't respond, didn't even look up. Kimura approached cautiously, his footsteps crunching on wet gravel. As he got closer, he realized something was wrong. The rain was falling on the man, but he wasn't getting wet. The raindrops seemed to pass right through. "Sir," Kimura whispered, his voice shaking. The man slowly raised his head, and Kimura saw his face. It was pale, translucent, with hollow dark eyes. "Thank you for bringing these," the man said in a voice like autumn wind. "My wife, she's been waiting." The man gestured to the tombstone beside him. Kimura's flashlight illuminated the engraving. "Beloved wife, died October 15th, 1987. Today was October 15th. Kimura set down the delivery bag, his hands trembling. "We used to come here every year on this date," the man continued. "Share a drink, bring her favorite flowers, just like when she was alive." Kimura backed away slowly, not wanting to turn his back on the figure. "But this year," the man said, "I couldn't make the trip myself." He looked down at another tombstone, right where he was sitting. Kimura's flashlight revealed fresh engraving. "Loving husband died September 3rd. This year." Kimura ran back to his scooter, not stopping until he reached the convenience. The next morning, he checked the delivery record. The order had been placed from an account that had been inactive for over a month. The payment had come from a bank account that belonged to someone who died in September. But the money was real. Love, it seems, doesn't end with death. Sometimes it just finds new ways to deliver. Sato-kun started his food delivery job in the summer of 2019. He worked for one of those app-based delivery services, you know the kind. The job was simple: pick up food, follow the GPS, deliver to the customer. But on November 23rd, his GPS led him somewhere impossible. The order came in just before midnight, yakitori from a restaurant in Harajuku. The delivery address was in a residential area, about 15 minutes away. Sato loaded the thermal bag onto his bicycle and started following the GPS route. At first, everything seemed normal. Familiar streets, typical Tokyo neighborhood. But after 10 minutes of riding, he realized he was still in the same area. The GPS kept saying continue straight, but the streets kept repeating. Same convenience store, same vending machines, same apartment building. Sato stopped and checked his phone. GPS showed he should have arrived already, but the blue dot indicating his location kept moving in circles. He tried taking a different street, but somehow ended up in the same loop. Every path led back to the same intersection, same buildings, the same route. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. The yakitori in his bag was getting cold, but Sato couldn't find the delivery ad. That's when he noticed the streets were completely empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no lights in any window. Even the convenience store, which should have been open 24 hours, was dark. Sato tried calling his dispatch, but his phone showed no signal. He was trapped in a delivery route that didn't exist. Panic started to set in. He pedaled faster, trying to break free from the loop. But every street corner brought him back to the same intersection. Then, he saw another delivery rider approaching from the opposite direction. The rider looked exhausted, desperate, like he'd been cycling for hours. As they passed each other, Sato called out, "Are you stuck too?" The other rider stopped and turned around. His face was pale, haunted. "I've been trying to make this delivery for 3 days, the rider said. 3 days? Sato couldn't believe it. That's impossible. The customer keeps calling, the rider continued. Says their food is late, but I can never find the address. I can never leave this area. Sato looked at the other rider's delivery bag. It was covered in frost. Just stop trying, Sato said. Cancel the order and go home. The rider shook his head sadly. I've tried. Every time I try to cancel, The app won't let me. It just says continue to destination. At that moment, Sato's phone buzzed. A message from the customer. Where is my food? I'm hungry. Please hurry. Sato threw his phone to the ground, shattering the screen. The GPS voice stopped. The loop broke. Suddenly, he could see the main road ahead, traffic, normal city life. He looked back, but the other rider was gone. Sato never did delivery work again, but sometime, late at night, he still gets notifications on his broken phone. New delivery requests from customers who are still waiting. My cousin Hiroshi used to deliver for an Indian curry restaurant in Shinjuku. He told me this story right before he moved back to the countryside. It happened during the rainy season, when the city felt heavy and oppressed. Hiroshi had been delivering to the same office building for months, a tall, glass structure that housed several tech companies. The orders always came from different floors, different companies, but they always ordered the same thing, extra large portions of beef curry. The building's lobby was modern, sleek marble and chrome surfaces, but something about it always made Hiroshi uncomfortable. Maybe it was how the security guard never looked up from his desk, or how the elevator music was always slightly off-key. One evening in June, Hiroshi received an order for the 47th floor. That was strange. The building only had 45 floors. He mentioned this to his manager, who checked the order system. It says 47th floor right here, the manager said. Maybe they added new floors. Hiroshi loaded the curry into his delivery bag and headed to the building. In the elevator, he pressed the button for 45, the highest available. But as the elevator climbed, the display kept counting up. 46, 47, 49. The elevator didn't stop at 47, it kept going higher. Hiroshi pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. The numbers kept climbing, 52, 55, 60. Finally, it stopped at floor 73. The doors opened with a soft ding. Outside was a long, narrow hallway, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs. The walls were painted a sickly yellow color, like old tea. Hiroshi stepped out cautiously, looking for room 4702, the delivery address. But all the doors were unmarked, identical metal doors stretching into the dim. From behind the doors, he could hear sound, chewing sounds, slurping, the scraping of utensils against plate. Everyone on this floor was eating. Hiroshi walked down the hallway, following the sound of consumption. The eating sounds grew louder, more aggressive, almost violent. At the end of the hall, one door stood slightly open. Inside, Hiroshi glimpsed something that made his blood freeze. People sitting around a conference table, but they weren't quite people. Their mouths were too large, their teeth too sharp. They were devouring curry, but also devouring each other, feeding on themselves in an endless, hungry cycle. One of them looked up, sauce dripping from its oversized mouth. "Ah," it said in a wet, gargling voice. "More food has arrived." Hiroshi dropped the curry bag and ran back to the elevator. He pressed the down button frantically, but the elevator was already moving up. Behind him, doors began opening, and hungry things started pouring into the hallway. The elevator finally arrived, going down to floors that shouldn't exist. Hiroshi pressed every button and somehow found himself back in the lobby. The security guard looked up for the first time and smiled, with too many teeth. "Come back soon," the guard said. "The building is always hungry." Hiroshi never delivered to that building again. But sometimes, when he walks past it, he can hear the sounds from inside. Chewing, swallowing, growing. The building is still feeding,